I need to give my credit
I'm
card.
sorry, BT yesterday.
Yes.
I didn't catch the
10
memo that
cents,
we were reconvening it.
Yeah, that's okay.
I watched it.
You did?
After the fact.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How'd you think it went?
Good. I was very interested in what and what they said about Osaka.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They get a quarter.
It's a quarter.
Quarter penny.
Yeah, but it funds all, but I think they put 15 million or maybe 20 million
It
in
goes up there.
from general is all they put in.
Wow.
Because they don't say
Had to build in from the very start.
Oh,
Should have checked that out tonight.
Some of us were saying, I think he's stuck to that chair. Chamber with.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he's changing me up?
Yeah.
Okay, fine, I'll walk away.
And then some
City
naps.
go. Plus the city.
it's my buddy right here. We were just sitting next to each other for about 3 hours.
Well, that's the minimum requirement.
See, I said the only way that I was going to come to this meeting is if I got to sit next to you.
Oh, well, that explains why I got moved over.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Well, seeing a quorum here, it's 1:30, 1:31 now. I'm going to call the meeting to order. First thing I want to do is thank each of you for being here. These meetings do not happen without your participation, and I know you're all busy. And on behalf of all of our fellow employees, thank you for your service here. We can have roll call, or let's go ahead and ask the clerk to call roll, please.
Doug Engelson,
Here.
Rick Buchanan,
Here.
Sharita Wells.
Here.
Brandon Holmes.
Here.
Mark Seipel,
Here.
Michael Taylor,
Here,
Cody Compton,
Present.
Chelsea Barnett.
Here.
Very good. Again, seeing a quorum, we're ready to go. Notice of the meeting was properly posted on September 8th, 2022. I would entertain a motion here for approval of our minutes from our last meeting, which was April 12th, 2022. We have a motion from Brandon. Do we have a second?
Second.
Chelsea seconding. And please now vote. It might have been a while since you used one of these. If you need help, raise your hand. The clerks will help you.
Mr. Chairman, I was not here and did not have a chance to watch the video, so that is the explanation for my absence.
Do noted. Thank you for your explanation for abstaining. Jerry Hefner for record. Sharita, we're going to call the roll. Cassie, have we concluded our vote?
Motion passed.
Registered motion did pass. Thank you. And our second item on the agenda is one that I'll take, and the entire reason we're here today is to catch up as to what transpired at the end of the 2022 legislative session. If you'll recall, in our October meeting, I had Danny Lambert distribute a memo from me in which I listed about half a dozen bills that were moving through the legislature that might have impact on the handbook. We did not know what their ultimate fate would be. Only two of those did pass. One of them was really, from this county's standpoint, unnecessary. It authorized Oklahoma counties to pay their employees via direct deposit, a practice that had been pretty standard here in a number of other counties. A DA in one of the counties asked that it make it explicit. That does not require a change in the handbook. And Michael, I'm going to this point, and Chelsea in particular, we've adopted a pattern of meeting in the spring in order to try to identify any legislation pending out of the Capitol that might have impact on our handbook, personnel policies. It gives us a little early warning and puts us in a position to, if we were particularly concerned about any of those, either this committee or our elected officials might could try to impact that legislation. So the standard pattern and practice we've tried to move into with the 2 regular meetings a year is that spring one, which looks ahead. And now we've got one set for October. I'm going to address that in a little bit. But the idea of that was to see what did pass. And particularly, a lot of the times, the legislation will have an effective date of November 1st. And that is the case with House Bill 4188. This is fairly rare that you see amendments to the State Travel Reimbursement Act. As Rick Buchanan and former Representative Cycle know very well, the County Travel Act basically emulates the state. And the story behind this is just some very minor changes were necessitated due to, I think, the Department of Human Services had some issues with their federal funds. And as far as the, so I've included here under item 2, just the legislation itself and a bill summary. I'm going to tell you that for our purposes, the changes that we will need to make in the handbook, which I'll pick up in under item 3 here, involve no longer can a state employee lease a vehicle when they're in out-of-state travel. That probably didn't happen very often, but that's a little cleanup they did. Secondly, you may recall something I brought to this committee a few years ago. The state has, up until this bill has passed, which will take effect November 1st, has permitted a state employee who travels out of state, rather than stay at lodging and pay for a hotel, they could perhaps stay at their brother-in-law's home and be reimbursed for $10 for doing so. That is being set aside effective November 1st, so we'll no longer be able to offer that particular reward or incentive, depending on how you look at it. There's just a couple other minor references that we're catching up in our own handbook as the statutory sites have changed. So it's very, very minimal. I don't know of a single employee that's going to miss anything here. But our first part of this, I just wanted to share with you what came out of the 22 session that has impact on the handbook. So perhaps I could entertain a motion and just say accept my verbal report.
So moved.
So moved from motion.
I will second to receive your report.
Thank you. And I guess we vote on that, right, Ms. Clerk?
Yes.
Cassie? Very good.
Motion passed.
And motion did pass. Thank you. Item 3 has 2 aspects to it. Number 1, as we customarily do, again, I'm going to emphasize this for some of our newer members or some that might not have been in here in a while. This first document that I put a label on called Insert C is merely an amalgamation of some edits that we still have in the works or some that we might wish to make. That is, we call it our working draft. It's property of this committee. It gives us a vehicle for, in the event someone in HR, payroll, or indeed one of the offices comes forward and says, hey, I'd like to try to offer consideration an amendment to the 2021 interim handbook. This is the forum under which we could do that. So that document's here, and it makes for a useful reference, I suppose. But the specific intent, as I alluded to a moment ago, was that there is a need for us to go ahead and amend our Section 2.29 Travel Reimbursement Act in order to incorporate some changes. So what's labeled Insert D is a track changes version that was attached to enable you to peek through. I've already explained how relatively insignificant those are, but nonetheless, it is important that we take a position on this, and what I'm going to be seeking is a motion that this body approve the proposed revised section 2.29 reimbursement policy. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any before we take that motion. The crickets have it, so that's appropriate. Again, we already knew this was coming from last spring. So do I hear a motion to approve revised section 2.29 as approve it as far as this committee goes? Thank you, Mr. Buchanan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Holmes. We have a motion and a second, and if we could all indicate your vote, yes?
Just to make sure the changes that we're talking about here are reflective of not allowing a lease vehicle out of state, and then the lodging accommodations not being able to utilize an alternative means other than like a hotel. Is that what I'm seeing here?
Yes, Mr. Compton, those are the two edits of any significance to an employee of Oklahoma County. The other changes that you'll see are basically changing citations and so forth. And at the risk of confusing anyone, I hesitated to do it, but out of respect for my former state colleagues, you guys might remember that the state, and that works this way as of today, they go by a 6-hour clock. So when you travel, say out of state, your first day of travel or day before and your day coming back, they had the rather complicated practice of looking at how many hours were you in travel status, and they would give you a fraction thereof, rounding to the nearest 6 hours. Well, it became burdensome for OLMs, I guess, to check the math and everything. So they are actually in the bill conforming to how we do it. This county, as you'll recall, is just at a flat. You can receive 75% of a per diem on your first and last day. So they've seen the light. We're making sure the handbook gets the proper citation in there. But yes, Cody, very minimal.
Okay.
Thank you for your question.
You bet.
And we were in the process of voting. If you haven't yet, please vote. Clerk, do we have a decision? Passes unanimously. Thank you. 8-0. Now, finally, item 4 of the agenda. And Chelsea, our practice has been to first adopt amendments to the handbook here. By the way, that's with the intention of it being a supplement to the 2021 interim handbook, effective November 1st, 2021. What we'll do is, as we have in the past, put that out there after Budget Board adopts it and runs through BOCC. It'll be a simple separate document on InfoZone. That's how we do it. And at some point in the future, probably early next year, I envision we'll publish a new complete 2023 handbook, and we'll just fold that in there. But in order to get this from this committee, we've just adopted this change. It's now appropriate, and I'll seek a motion for this body to actually recommend moving it on to the budget board. We have a 2-step process, Chelsea, for sometimes it may be something a little more complicated. And if one of the members said, hey, I'd like a little more time to brief my elected official before it shows up, that's why we take a 2-step. But this one's quite simple, and I will do that. Entertain a motion to recommend the budget board adopt this as a supplement effective November 1st, 2022. So moved, Mr. Cycle?
Yes.
Thank you. Moved by Mr. Cycle. Do we have a second? Second by Brandon. Thank you. All in favor, please find your your green button and vote yes. All opposed, no. The ayes have it 8-0. And at that point, we're going to start to wrap this up. I think all I can do today, since it's not specifically on here, I alluded earlier to the fact that our next regularly scheduled meeting, I think it's October 4th, due to some schedule conflicts. It's my intention of filing a notice with the clerk at least 10 days in advance that will cancel that meeting, and with the idea of rescheduling it for November, most likely we'll make sure that we can have a quorum and do that. Otherwise, for some reason, maybe we don't have board member comments, or yes, we do. Is there, first of all, any citizen here that wishes to participate? Seeing none, we'll now go to board member comments, starting with Brandon at my left. Pass it on. Mr. Compton.
I think the only thing that I have, Joe had talked to me about in the past, we had talked about a telework policy in here, and there's been, I guess, a draft and some recommendations and stuff. So he was interested to know moving forward where we are on that, and looking forward to ironing something down as it relates to that.
I really appreciate you raising that. I know that HR has worked on that with your MIS department, and our office has interacted with them, and I plan to follow up on that and see where it's at and get it to the right place. Because it originated in a policy and governance meeting, it was, you may recall, the origin of this, it came up through MIS department that had been telecommuting. And so I think they reported in to a policy and governance meeting that I had the pleasure of watching, and then you all asked HR to be sure and engage with them on that, and they had done that. And
You're kind of getting off of this on an agenda item here.
very good. So, thank you for that, Counselor. But we'll make sure of it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah, appreciate it. Michael?
I'll pass.
Thank you. Jesse? Thank you. Rick? Very good. Thank you so much. Well, it appears do I have a motion for adjournment?
Second.
Rick, and second Cody. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Good. Attention, yes, I guess we vote on that one too. Adjournment passes. Thank you.
We are
Congratulate you, Doug, on the short meeting in your tenure.